Hi everyone, welcome back to another Reddit cheating story. Before we start, please hit the subscribe button and notification bell if you love to watch more cheating stories. I did a terrible mistake to invite him to stay together with my two kids. I, 43F, got together with him, 43 meters, about 4 months after my divorce. At the time my kids were 4 and 6. We dated for a few months and things progressed quickly. He was absolutely charming, smart, handsome, funny. We had so much in common and also had great sex. I knew 6 months probably wasn't enough time to get into a serious relationship, but here was someone who made me feel so good. I thought I hit the jackpot and told myself not to let fear get in my way, to allow myself to be open and vulnerable again even after being hurt by the divorce. I introduced him to my kids and he was so great with them. They quickly became friends and bonded. At this time, he was finishing up a master's degree here in the Northeast and planned to stay here to get a job. He came out here from the West. After graduating, he wasn't finding work as quickly as he thought he would, even though he had just got his degree from an Ivy. He was burning through his savings to pay rent and came to the conclusion he'd have to move back west and stay with family and look for work from there. Here's my first mistake. Thinking it couldn't be that much longer before he could find a position, I invited him to stay with us, my kids and me, in the meantime. This was not to be a permanent thing, and I felt I was just helping him out while at the same time giving this blossoming relationship a chance. It wasn't an easy decision for either of us, but he accepted and we said it would be temporary. The kids understood this too. But upon moving in, our relationship really began amping up. We became very close, all of us. It did take longer than expected to find a job, but eventually he did. By that time, though, we were fully in love. We had a routine. Neither of us felt inclined to change our circumstances, although if he said he wanted his own place, I would have completely understood. But I liked that he stayed. He was so great to be around, and he seemed to really love us and enjoyed being part of our family. We vacationed together. He and I took a trip to Spain and many road trips around East. He came to all my family events, met my friends, etc. At about the 2-year mark he was laid off from his job. We were back to square one with him looking for work again. It seemed he was starting to get depressed. He said he was tired a lot, felt sick, didn't seem to be consistently energetic or happy. He was very hurt by the layoff and I think it damaged his self-esteem. I tried to be a good support, but also it was hard to support 2 kids and an adult by myself. After a few months of what seemed like only half-hearted job searching, I expressed my frustrations and then things started getting a little rocky. We still had sex at least once a day, and he still kept a happy attitude with the kids. But he began picking on me about my ex-husband and other little things. I'd get on his case about having plenty of time for social media but not for job hunting. He'd go out with friends and stay late, often without a phone call to let me know. Also, his mom was diagnosed with cancer. He began buying flights with his credit card and sometimes stay 2 to 3 weeks at a time, leaving me to care for his dog. He'd buy one-way tickets to stay flexible, but that also meant I had no idea when he'd be coming back, how long I had to care for the dog alone, etc. But his mom had cancer and they are close, so I put up with it. Clearly, the honeymoon phase was over, but I was sure things would get better once he found a job and the situation with his mom got better. Then one day we were fighting, and he actually said something hurtful to the kids in order to get back at me, telling them something I said about their dad. It was way out of line. I told him he should pack his bags and move on. He did. It was painful for all of us. Having nowhere else to go, he drove across the country to stay with his parents. Aside from some little updates here and there, we didn't talk much for about 2 months. Then he reached out to tell me he loved me, he was sorry, we both got caught up in a bad cycle, and we could work it out and get better. Over the next few months we began talking and texting regularly every day, and things felt really good again. He flew out a couple times and I visited him once out there. He was searching for jobs back here where I'm so we could be together. We talked about maybe we'd moved in together too quickly, and that was the source of the issues. It's a lot of pressure. Especially taking on not only a live-in girlfriend, but her kids, too. I agreed. Then a recruiter reached out to him with a great opportunity, but it was out west. He took the job. He said the position was for 6 to 12 months and we could get through it. I said I didn't want a long-distance relationship, that I had needs that didn't align with that. I hated being in different time zones, I hated FaceTime sex, I hated the infrequent visits. But I loved him. And I let him convince me to give it a shot. He said all the same stuff about loving me and the kids, wanting to be a family again, etc. He FaceTimed the kids every night before bed. We had many good conversations, and in some ways it seemed our relationship was actually growing stronger. He miraculously found a long-term dog sitter and came to visit us for 3 weeks. He also flew out for my birthday last winter for a long weekend. We had an amazing time. It was like it was in the beginning but better. Then, pandemic. We were stuck. He couldn't get the promotion that the position was geared toward. His company, and whole industry, became stagnant. He was lucky to not be laid off again. We tried to make the best of it. I was really lonely and needed him, but we didn't want to fly too much, although I did travel to see him a couple times this past summer. Again, things were great and the way we were with each other was like we were never apart. He began talking about marriage. About buying a house together. He was shopping for a bigger car to accommodate my kids. He told Teehee kids when the pandemic was over we were all going to Disney World. I was so happy. I was also lonely. It's now been 18 months since he took that job, and again I began feeling like he wasn't trying hard enough to come back to us. Sure, it's a pandemic, but his industry was recovering and there were jobs out here, even if he had changed companies. My kids were getting bigger, and he was missing it. He said he would come for birthday, last month. Here's where the shit really hits the fan. Or at least, when I find out. A couple days before he was set to fly, he told me he was actually in the state his parents lived in, one state away, that he was there to leave his dog with them so that he could stay for an extended time. I was surprised that he had made an 8-hour road trip without telling me, but he said he wanted to surprise me. But then he also mentioned kind of offhandedly that he had applied for a position in DC and had made it to the 3rd round of interviews. I was stunned. I couldn't believe he hadn't told me about this or even the fact that he was searching jobs anywhere but near me. He said he was interviewing for practice, that he had no intention of taking the job, and that he knew I wouldn't understand so he didn't tell me. It didn't make sense and I was crushed. I told him not to come out, because it seemed he had been stringing me along and was ready to take a job elsewhere. He canceled his flight and got angry with me for keeping him away. We didn't talk for a few days, but then he called saying he realized that what he did was hurtful but it was not intentional, that he was so sorry, that he was doing everything in his power to come back to me ASAP. He said his car broke down at his parents', and he was stuck there awaiting repairs and might have to buy a new car. So a couple weeks go by and I notice that even though we are still texting throughout the day, the nighttime calls to the kids have ceased, and he only FaceTimes when he's out walking the dog. I realize that I haven't heard or seen his parents in the background at any point. One day, he's FaceTiming from outside in his bare feet, and I can see horses behind him. His parents live in a paved retirement community. I ask him about this, and begins giving me some weird runaround. It didn't make sense. I am not the stalking type, but I did a Google Street View of his parents' house and no place for horses. I ask him again where he is and that I think he's lying. And he gets mad at my accusation and doubles down that he's in state name. So I take my stalking to another level and contact his sister, asking her if he's been staying with their folks for the past 3 weeks. Her reply was weird. She was like, please don't tell him I told you this, but he hasn't been honest about everything, and no, he hasn't been staying with them. It was like she knew something, but I didn't want to be a psycho and push something that she was clearly already uncomfortable with. I asked him to prove he was where he said he was. Like, let me talk to his parents or take a photo or whatever. Hours go by, and he sends me a picture of a famous landmark in the state capital, which is 4 hours from where his parents live. I checked the timestamp, my stalker skills improving quickly, and it had been taken a few hours before. I call him out, and comes up with this bullshit about his whole family took a road trip there to visit a sick uncle, and no, he didn't feel he needed to mention it before. Now my mind is frantically thinking about who he knows in that city. Clearly he's been staying with someone for weeks and hiding his location from me. And then I thought back to that friend who was miraculously willing to sit his dog for several weeks. I searched my text to confirm my memory. He had given her first name back then, a unique one, that she was married with 4 kids who loved the dog, and that she had a lot of land with horses. Some Facebook stalking. Now I'm getting concerned for myself, like, am I really that person? And she was pretty easy to find. Voila, she lives right outside that city. Yes, she has 4 kids, but no, she is not married. I throw a Hail Mary and send her a FB message. Yes, it seems I've become that person. But I was desperate to find the truth, because at this point he's telling me I have a vivid imagination and I'm being controlling and acting weird. Now, my gut tells me that she is the missing piece to the puzzle. Yes, I wanted an answer, even if that answer was that I was indeed crazy and imagining something that wasn't there. On another level, I thought about her 4 kids, and the idea that he was likely lying to her and them, too. That they likely had no idea he was in a relationship with me, but had been staying at their house. So a part of me felt like, I'd want to know. And I can't deny the other level of what I was doing, which is that if he was going to fuck with me in my life, I was going to fuck with his. A day passes and she didn't even read the message. Or ignored it because she didn't know me. I began to figure that I was wrong. And in fact, he was still texting me that he loved me, he was disappointing I couldn't trust him, that I was pushing him away, that I was getting cold feet about being together and trying to sabotage. And then while I was at work, her message came. I will spare all the details, but it turned out my gut was right, at least about the fact that he had been staying with her. But in my heart is pounding just writing this because it's still so raw. This was just yesterday he had been with her and her kids since before Christmas. And they've been in a serious relationship for 5 years. She's been flying up to see him, 1.5-hour flight, once a month for the past 2 years. We've probably passed each other in the airport coming and going FFS. He had her believe that I was just his platonic roommate when he lived with me. All those times he flew out to visit family on holidays or for his mom's cancer when he was gone for weeks at a time. With her and her kids. Her kids love him like mine do. She said she's never been happier like I was. The calculation it took to keep us both in the dark for years. The audacity and complete lack of conscience to string along not just 2 women, but 6 little kids in total. I don't know how to wrap my head around it, or how I will ever trust anyone again. And most of all, I don't know how I'll tell the kids they'll suddenly never see or hear from him again. I'd love any words of wisdom or advice. But please, I feel so stupid and so ashamed, so angry at myself to have put my children in this position, that I don't need to hear insults. I am open to constructive criticism, but please be gentle. My heart is broken. Edit. I just want to say thank you to every single person who responded. I am a bit surprised and overwhelmed by all the support. I started my day in absolute pieces, couldn't get out of bed, and just needed to write it out. But all these responses really have helped. I keep coming back to many of them that are giving me strength and perspective. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell.